Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel called IVD Manufacturing. So today we are going to discuss on a topic called medical device risk analysis and its periodic review. So my friends, before we go on with the lecture, we first of all we need to answer to a question which is displayed on my screen. How often do you think, talk about, and review the risk at your company? So please sit in a private space, debate on this question and answer to yourself, keeping yourself in a company purview. What is risk? Risk is nothing but it refers to the potential for the harm or an adverse outcome associated with the use of a medical devices. The common risks are such as risk to a patient's safety, regulatory compliance issues, financial instability, and harm to a company's reputations. So friends, why a risk analysis is essential for all of us? Because it causes a potential harm and lead to a legal issues, making risk analysis a critical step in a medical device company. What is the frequency of conducting a risk review? So risk review should be conducted multiple times a year as needed. Though there is no such standard protocol which defines in terms of the frequency, though it mainly depends upon how often changes you brought into your product with respect to the feedback or an systematic update which occur within a company. The goal is to keep a risk analysis as a dynamic document that accurately reflects a current product and the process risk. What are the tools for the risk analysis? So most common tools for the risk analysis is an FMEA. Sometimes we'll call as a DFMEA, which pertains to the design failure mode effect analysis, or sometimes we'll call as a SFMEA, which pertains to the safety failure mode effect analysis. The remaining three tools are the primary hazard analysis, the event tree analysis, and the fault tree analysis. Now let's talk about what is an RMP, which is called as a risk management plan. So friends, the risk management plan is mainly divided into two phases. The first phase is we call as a risk management, while the second phase is called as a risk assessment. The risk management comprises of almost 6 steps, whereas risk assessment comprises of the last 2 steps. The first step starts with the analysis, where you need to do an analysis either on your processes, on your product, on your design phase, or on your regulatory phases, or on your marketing phases. Once you do the analysis, now you need to move to a subsequent stages, which is called as a risk evaluation. Risk evaluation is mainly done in terms of the RPN, which is called as a risk priority number, which comprises of the occurrence, severance, and detectability as the 3 of the parameter to arrive to a concise figure of the values. Once we do the risk evaluation, we now need to move to a third stages, which is called as a risk control. We need to define a procedure by which we can bring down the RMP score to an acceptable score as per the defined standard operating procedures. As you know guys, like whenever we do a risk analysis, there are few risks which is left at the end of the or after performing a risk control, which is called as a residual risk. So how this residual risk is more going to impact on your processes or the products or the systems, you need to evaluate its overall residual risk. The fifth step is the risk management review. And the last is the production and the post-production activities. So the last two steps falls under the risk assessment. What changes usually trigger a risk review, my friends? So mainly I have tried to capture almost 6 points which trigger the risk review. I will start from the last stages, which is the design changes, the processes changes, supplier changes, regulatory or the standard updates, feedback and post-market surveillance, and end of the life and the product extension. So the last 4 stages are the common changes which drives or trigger the risk review irrespective of the frequency based on your protocol. Now let's talk about the few examples considering the 3 of the changes, which was the design changes, the processes changes, and the supplier changes, quoting a real life example of the medical device company. When it's come with respect to the design changes, so the common design changes that require risk review are of the 3 aspects. First, launching a new features or the functionality, which usually falls under the disruption technology when it's come with respect to the manufacturing setup. The second one is modifying the existing design, or the third is integrating a new technology. So my friends, let's talk about an example. Assuming that one of the medical device company are manufacturing an insulin pump, which have initiated a process based on the post-market surveillance to redesign its casting to make it more durable and resistant to impact. But the question comes that the casting which was there in the original design, which was an alpha lock, it was made up of the plastics. But now bringing these changes, it is asking the casting to be prepared with a structure called the metal alloy, which will give the strength and the durability. So what are the issue with these changes? So now keep in your mind, plastic replaced by the metal alloy. So as you know, the property of the metal alloy is that it creates an overheating. It will increase the device weights. So what are the changes which calls for the risk review? So a company should implement a design adjustment, a testing protocol, a quality check to mitigate the identified risk, which are more durable insulin pump, casting and enhances the device reliability without compromising a patient's safety or the device performances. So I hope this was a very simple example to make you understand about the design changes which triggers the requirement of the risk analysis. Now let's talk about the supplier changes. As you know, my friends, whenever you changes your vendor related to a certain design of the manufacturing against a required BOM, you need to perform a risk analysis. What are the few of the changes which triggers the risk review? The first changes which triggers the risk review is when you switch to a new supplier for the critical components or the materials, or either a changes which is held at the supply processes that could affect the quality or the reliability of the parts. Now let's talk about an example. Again, recalling an example of the medical device company which manufacture an insulin pump. Now whatever happened, this company, they have decided to switch to a new supplier for its main component, which is the pump's microcontroller. So usually the microcontroller is a critical part for a product called as an insulin pump. So the design, which was an old design, it was having some X performance characteristics. Bringing this change will impact on the new performance characteristic of that insulin pump. So the issue these changes can causes are mainly the two issues. It will impact a signal processing. Secondly, it will impact on the timing issues. So our main task is that based on the risk review, the team needs to detect the issue like a delayed insulin delivery or overheating, then implement an additional process controls or the testing procedures to mitigate the risk as early on. The interesting changes which usually occurs in the manufacturing company is getting an overall updates on the regulatory or the standards updates. So you must be knowing, as we progress, the standards keep on getting changes to accommodate a customer requirement time to time. So the two aspects which drives these changes are an update to the regulatory requirements that impact the product compliance or the risk management. The new regulations requiring an additional control or the risk assessments. Now let's talk about an example quoting a link with the regulatory or the standards update. Same. Assuming that a medical device company manufactures a surgical instrument, so they have been informed about an update in the sterilization procedure in the sterilization standard by a major regulatory body. So the new standards ask that manufacturer company to follow a more stringent sterilization process to ensure sterility assurance level. So now what happens, this company, they need to comply with an update of the standard, hence they need to change their current protocol or the current standard operating procedures related to the sterilization processes. So what you need to do, my friends, you need to conduct a risk review, and company needs to detect a potential risk associated with a new sterilization processes such as inadequate sterilization processes, increased wear or tear of the instruments, and the production delays. Now let's talk about changes based on its feedback on the post-market surveillance of your medical device products. So what are some of the reasons for those changes? Maybe a customer for your product have complained several times which was significant in nature, or an adverse event reports have reported indicating a potential risk pertaining to use of the particular medical devices. They trained in the post-market surveillance data suggesting an emerging issues, or finding based on an internal audits, the CAPA activities, or in regulatory inspections. Now let's talk about an example. So what happens, a company, they have launched a new surgical laser system. The moment they have launched, they started getting multiple complaints about the device intermittently shutting down during the procedure. Based on this complaint, a company decided to perform an internal audit and the PMS, and they have confirmed yes, the issue was persistent. So now what the company needs to do, or the team or the company, they need to revisit the FMEA and integrate the new feedback to identify the failure mode related to unanticipated system shutdowns. Afterward, a company must then analyze the root causes and implement a corrective measures. Now, end of the life and product extensions. The following changes can trigger a risk review with the two aspects. Extending a product life beyond its original planned duration. I'm increasing the shelf life against the claim period. Or introducing a new product variant or a line extension with the same design or the manufacturing processes. Assuming a medical device company is phasing out its popular vital sign monitor and introducing an extended version with enhanced features like improved data connectivity and a larger display. So now careful management is essential to support the existing product while smooth launching the new version. As the company plans the end of the life for the current model, it introduces an extended version. So a risk review needs to be identify and mitigate a potential risk such as a spare part discontinuation, a compatibility issues, or the product launch delays and the transition management. This proactive review will help the company to address this risk effectively. So now what is the conclusion, my friends? Not following a proper risk review will trigger and lead to a serious repercussion including a product failure, regulatory non-compliances, increasing liability, safety hazards, potential harm to the user, the destruction of the company reputation. So myself, Amar Dinesh, being a medical device professional expert for around 11 years of experience in the medical device field. So be keeping in touch for the more such posts around the regulatory and the compliance in the coming days. Thank you. Take care. Bye bye, my friends.